Hey everyone, happy Thursday. Hope you're having a great day. Today we're going to talk about the consequences of compromise. Titus 2:11 through 14. Stuck again. Is that an accurate description of your life? For many believers, it is. Even when they know why they're stalled or stuck, some can't move past the sin that trips them up. Others are blinded to the source of their troubles, and they feel as if all they are doing is running in place. Israel, God's chosen nation, had a history of defeat from yielding to temptation instead of obeying God's commandments. Compromise defeats us too. God calls his children to live in obedience, but it's easy to become preoccupied with things that we want. And when they are reinterpreted in our minds as God's commands in a way that suits us, what's more than the world's clamors for us when it fits into our mold? It shows us that little or no inclination to have to follow God. Satan can gain a foothold in your life very quickly whenever we obey our way or the attempt to bypass God's law. We'd be fooling ourselves to think that we can compromise and still live a Christ-centered life and compromise God's law. The Lord commands us to reject ungodliness, Titus 2:11 through 12, and we're wise to listen. Thankfully, we have the Holy Spirit's power to help us. A good place to start is by agreeing that God has an attitude of action in our life, and what is displeasing to him should be displeasing to us. Determine to set your mind on obedience no matter the cost. So it's just like whenever you are a child or you had kids and they knew they weren't supposed to touch something. And they got to that stage where they would look at you as they were going to touch it. Like, hey, Mom. Hey, Mom. And they're just waiting for you to discipline them. And the more that you discipline them, then they would stay away. Funny story. I can't grow a plant, save my life. So if you come to my house, every plant in my house is artificial. Not a live plant here. Not a one. So when my kids were little, the main room was like all open, but there was like a partial wall that divided. And sometimes they got carried away, running away. And I was talking to a friend about this the other day. Power Rangers was their big show, and after watching that, sometimes it was like, oh my gosh, they're never watching that show again. But one day I was dusting, and my theme was kind of Western because I had horses and a barn and all that good stuff. But I picked up one of my fake cactuses to dust it, and the one arm on the cactus was taped. And I giggled because I thought, oh my gosh, one of the kids either knocked it over, broke it off, whatever, and they scotch taped it thinking I wouldn't notice. So hollered for the kids to come down, and they're standing there, and I said, okay, which one of you broke my cactus? Well, it's kind of like the king that, had the one baby and the two women and was going to cut the baby in half, Well, right away it was like neither one of them said anything. And I said, you're not going to be in trouble. Just tell me which one of you did it. Well, nobody's saying anything. And it was like, okay, And I forget what I said, and my son's eyes but it was almost like, how did you know? And it was so obvious. And they were probably 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, I don't know. But it was the funniest thing. And I mean, it was a cheapie. It wasn't expensive. It was tiny, but I mean, I giggled when I picked it up because it was like, oh my gosh, they taped it. They scotch taped it thinking I wouldn't know. Well, sometimes when you're in sin or thinking about sin or contemplating sin or whatever it is that you're going to do, are you thinking that or trying to convince yourself that God won't notice, or that it's going to be okay, or it's not really a sin, or God is all-knowing? Just kind of like parents with eyes in the back of their head. I don't know if that's a good analogy or not, but that's my analogy. That's what I think of whenever I think of that, because it was kind of like, and my parents, my dad was a teacher at the high school, and he was in vocational school, and my stepmom was a teacher. My granddad taught at the worked at the local appliance store. My aunt owned a hair salon. I mean, there wasn't anybody in town that didn't know my family. My step grandparents owned an egg farm. I mean, good Lord. So it was like me as a child growing up, it was like, oh, I can't do that. Like, Like, I do anything, somebody is going to know me, know my parents, know my grandparents, know I can't get away with anything. Nope. Not going to happen. And then when it comes to the last child, which would be my stepbrother, which is my mom and my stepdad's son, shoot. He was sneaking out of the house. He got in so much trouble, and I'm thinking, are you kidding? I could have probably got away with murder. Not. But how did he get away with that? I couldn't. I thought I couldn't. Probably could have, but that wasn't my personality anyway. So, and I'm rambling right now. But are you compromising or trying to compromise the Holy Spirit when God is all-knowing? Have a great day. See you tomorrow.